Joined by my friend Anwar Richardson, a guy who is more connected to the pulse of Texas recruiting maybe than anyone year round. And so, Anwar, when the big news came out today, number one quarterback and number one prospect in the nation is coming to Texas, Arch Manning, what was your initial reaction?
I thought Steve Sarkisian did the darn thing, to be quite honest with you, Jeff, because, I mean, when you think about the odds that were somewhat stacked against Steve Sarkisian coming off a 5-win season, 6 straight losses, that bad loss that I don't want to talk about and have people go back into counseling for, it showed that when it came to the recruitment of Arch Manning, what really mattered to the family was Steve Sarkisian. It showed that they had a belief in Steve Sarkisian because, look, they could have went to University of Georgia. That's a program coming off of a national title. How many draft picks did they just have? It seemed like they had, double digits in draft picks. And they can say, hey, we are the finished product. But when they thought about who's going to be the guy, the quarterback whisperer, the person who can develop Arch and follow into the Manning legacy, they said only one person can do that, and Steve Sarkisian, and that speaks volumes to who he is as a quarterback developer and what he's been able to do and accomplish throughout his career, and of course at Texas.
So this decision, they liked Texas, but they loved Coach Sark. This decision was about Coach Sark and his football mind.
Yes, because when you really, again, if you just base it off of football, it doesn't make any logical sense, right? Because tell me how many 5-win teams are pulling in national, top recruits or anything to that effect. It was a Sarkisian thing. It was who can help develop this guy, and again, when the Mannings co-sign on you, that's saying something. That's like Beyonce telling you you're going to be a great entertainer one day. That's like Chappelle telling you, I think you're funny. That's like, Aerosmith saying, we think you got a career as an entertainer. When you have the top of the top, best of the best, when you talk about Archie, you talk about Eli, you talk about Cooper, you talk about that entire family, Peyton. And then they say, you know what? We know quarterbacks better than anybody else. So they're really the first family of sports. And when that family says, but we believe in Sarkisian, no matter what we've seen, no matter anything that's going on, that, again, it speaks volumes to it. It was a 100% I believe in Steve Sarkisian, and that's the reason why we're coming here.
Got the Beyonce-like endorsement. I like to hear that. Well, tell me about the Beyonce-like skills. Can Arch get it done on the field? I mean, the recruiting numbers say that he's one of the best that we've seen at this level in his recruitment. Does he have a superpower on the field? Is it accuracy? Is it reading a defense? Is it arm strength? What does he do best?
I think everything that you just named is what he does best. And don't forget, this guy's also a basketball player. So there is some footwork and agility that is there. But, the arm strength is there. The reads is there. Everything that you want in a quarterback. He's a 5-star prospect. And I think, Jeff, that what also helps him out a lot is they don't have to rush. This is not a person, when he gets here, he has to play right away. He can redshirt because you still got Quinn Ewers that's in that room. So he can sit back, he can learn. They don't have to rush his development. They don't have to put him out there right away. You give him some time to learn and develop, to learn and grow, learn from Steve Sarkisian. And again, trust the process, because if anyone knows the process of growing and developing into a quarterback, it would be this family. I think that whole thing makes it a really good fit for him here at Texas.
You mentioned the process. Sometimes there are bumps along the road in that process. 5 stars are usually safe picks, but not always foolproof. How close to a sure deal is Arch's ability in his future?
It's about as close as a sure deal as you can get. The odds when you start getting into guys who are 5 stars, the numbers suggest that the overwhelming majority of them become NFL players at some point. And so I think when you combo his raw ability, what he already has, what he already knows, and then you combine that with Steve Sarkisian and his ability to develop quarterbacks, and you look at his history, whether it's long-term, way back, and we're going to go to Carson Palmer up into, what he was able to do at the University of Alabama. And then look, even, to a certain degree, Casey Thompson, who led the Big 12 in touchdown passes last year. You've seen what he's able to do with immense talent, with a little bit of talent. And so you combine those two things, it ends up being a really good marriage that, I guess will lead to a hit song. Or you want to stay with your Beyonce reference?
I do. Well, Anwar, you've been covering Texas recruiting really in depth since at least 2012. Would you call today UT's biggest recruiting win since Quinn Ewers, since Bijan? Is it going all the way back since Vince Young? What is this?
It's since ever. It's the biggest one ever. Here's the reason why. Because someone say, well, they say Vince Young, but Vince Young at that time, while he was a top recruit, it was more of a regional thing. You know, it was more of a regional component to the Vince Young. This thing, though, this become national news. ESPN, it was their top story. Colin Cowherd was talking about it. It was a national story. Last time I checked was a couple hours ago. He had over 100,000 likes just on that post. So because of the magnitude of it, because of the name, it becomes the biggest recruit, the biggest get ever in the University of Texas history. The only question really becomes who's number two, because that's how big, that's how huge it is. There's no comparison. It's this guy, and this guy is only. He's the number one.
I imagine those message boards that you moderate and you comb through are just on fire right now. Yeah. What have you heard Texas fans say?
Oh, they're happy. There's going to be a lot of babies made tonight here in Austin. I can tell you that much. So there are people who are happy. And, you know, you got to think about it. This is a program a fan base that's been through a lot. You know, you talked about that over the last couple of years. You know, there's been 3 times they haven't been to a bowl game, you know, over the last, you know, was it been like 6 years or so, 7 years, whatever that case may be. So Texas fans have went through a lot last year. And so you finished last year with a top recruiting class, and that was a lot to be happy about. But then to be able to have this in, really what it does is starting to set the expectations that, okay, Steve Sarkisian, you were a great recruiter. You were able to do the darn thing. And now people want to see it on the field. But, you know, I've told every Texas fan, hey, don't worry about the season. Don't worry about what the offense is going to look like, the defense is going to look like, all the adjustments, Gary Patterson's influence today. As you sit here, and it's June 23rd, enjoy it. Enjoy your moment, because you've been through a lot. So enjoy it. Drink your favorite drink. You know, do whatever you like to do that makes you happy. Make your favorite meal. Maybe have Jeff come over and make you some barbecue. I think I've heard good things about that. Whatever it is that's going to make you happy, do it today. Enjoy the moment. Live it up, because as you're a Texas fan, you've been through a lot, and you absolutely deserve it.
Yeah, let me know what your favorite drink is, and I might even provide the barbecue, not just go over there and cook it.
Perfect.
Assuming you got some of those drinks for
Food me. At Jeff's house is all I heard. You guys show up all unannounced. It'll be okay.
I will not give you that address. Moving on, the Manning name. You've talked about this football family, the legacy, the advice that Arch has gotten. How much does the Manning name play into this being that big national story that we're talking about?
I think it does. I think it plays a huge thing, you know, because look, as talented as Quinn Ewers was, and he was huge. It didn't move the needle the way this did. You know, the way that it's going, like I said, becoming a national story that's being everywhere that's possible, where even my mom, who's 72 years old, has asked me about it today. So that's the name definitely has a lot to do with it, you know, and living up to that name. You know, you've got to think about, you know, Arch and following that legacy. I mean, it's like being Michael Jordan's son, right? Or Jordan and their family. Like at some point, that's a lot to live up to. And it's hard. And Michael Jordan's sons, as great as he wasn't as great as he is. So to be able to take in that, what he's being able to see, glean, learn, and then be able to apply that and excel, and then trying to carve his own name and carve his own niche, you know, says a lot, you know, for him, coming here to the Big 12. Like this is, you know, even though Texas will be in the SEC at some point, it's still a Big 12 school at this moment. And for him to say, you know what, I don't need a ready-made product. I'm going to come here, create my own path, which is a lot of things when you talk about the Manning name, a lot of what they've been able to do, you know, and I think that helps Texas a lot. When you think about, you know, you got one guy that has to go to New York. What was that? A rebuilding project, right? Peyton goes to Indianapolis. What was that? A rebuilding project. Archie, really, for all those years in New Orleans. Like, think of what he had to go through. So they're kind of used to, okay, this is what it's going to take. This doesn't phase them. A lot of kids want to go and say, I want to go to something that's ready-made, that's already done, that's a finished product. And that this family totally thinks differently. They're like, no. We've gone to reclamation projects and we know how to make it work and how to turn it around. The name, and so the name, it speaks for itself, but the psychology behind the name is something that you can't ignore.
You mentioned something else that we can't ignore, and that's that upcoming transition from the Big 12 to the SEC. Mm-hmm. Chris Del Conte got a coach who has been successful in the SEC. It was as an assistant, but Sark has been successful there. Sark has 2 number-1 overall quarterbacks, got a crazy offensive line haul. Is this team inching closer and closer to being SEC ready? Are they building the future in the right way?
Well, yes. First of all, you got to be able to recruit when it comes to the SEC. And the one thing you got to give Texas some credit for, as in this recruitment, a lot of times people have kind of bashed Texas and said this is kind of, NIL. They've been doing this NIL. Mannings don't need money. So you can't, this ain't an NIL thing. This is clearly a football decision. So you got to take that into consideration. And then when you started about building to the SEC, Arkansas was the wake-up call. When Arkansas happened, you were able to see this is how far away this program is from there. Not having the offensive lineman that you need to be able to compete, not having a defensive lineman that you need to be able to compete. So we're able to see through recruiting how they were able to really attack that and be able to get those offensive linemen that they need, to be able to get the defensive linemen that they need. And then we've seen in the offseason them bringing in the skill position guys that you need. We know Steve Sarkisian loves speed. You know this, and I know this well. He likes fast guys, so he has the Xavier Worthies and being able to build on that. You still have the Jordan Whittingtons of the world, but then bringing a guy like Isaiah Nayor from Wyoming, again, a guy who was fast, big, all that. And then, the guy, Brennan Thompson, who, the top elite recruit that I know you've done a lot of reporting on. He's kind of fast. And so you see him building and bringing in a lot of, key components. And I think they'll be able to kind of get that momentum going, laying the foundation here over the next couple of years, and then get that foundation going. So when they get into the SEC, they've got the big bodies, they got the speed, they'll be able to compete. Whereas right now, they got a team that's kind of was able to compete in the Big 12. They're building towards the future. They still want to win now. Steve Sarkisian will tell you they want to win now, but you also got to get SEC ready as well.
How did today's decision impact the future? Do you think that other recruits around the nation saw Arch commit today and will jump on board maybe as soon as later this week?
Yes. I mean, that's the word that we're hearing, is that it did move the needle. It did resonate with a lot of guys. And so for people who were thinking about Texas, considering Texas, because we're kind of in that time frame from a recruiting standpoint where guys are kind of at their top 2, top 3 choices and starting to narrow it down. Some guys want to get this thing done before the season. So one of the reasons why Arch committed now, according to my sources, was they wanted to be able to influence recruiting. We all know that when the quarterback is the key person in the class, that has an influence, that has an impact. Texas has got another some big recruiting weekends ahead. And then we've heard that it will resonate. There could be, I don't want to say an avalanche. I don't want to use any words that people get to use against me, but it will have a positive impact in recruiting. It is, we'll see if it helps on the defensive side of the ball, because that's really where it's going to be necessary. But definitely on the offensive side, there's going to be a line of people going to gang up and say, I want to play with Arch Manning. And for those who were kind of like, I don't know about Texas, if the Mannings say they want to go to Texas, you got to go and take a double take and go, wait a second, did I miss something? Let's have that conversation. And I think also if you're Steve Sarkisian and his staff, you can then go to all the guys they're recruiting, even guys who have committed elsewhere, and say, hey, you want to have a conversation again? We got Beyonce. And I think people will be willing to listen and say, yeah, you do have Beyonce. Let's talk.
There we go. You heard it from my friend Anwar. Beyonce-like approval. It's time to celebrate today. Don't worry about this next season. Celebrate today. And don't be surprised if there are a lot of babies named Archie 9-10 months from now with Austin zip codes as home. Anwar, thank you so much for breaking down this huge day, maybe a transcendent day in Texas football history with us. We'll be sure to talk to you next time and follow your work on orangebloods.com.